Welcome. Let's talk about the next 25 questions. Now here most of the questions were from the basics of economics and environment. One of the questions talked about home guards. Now the various choices given under the concept here, in the first choice, it's important to understand the rules of the state are taken into account and not the center. So first choice gets incorrect. Then we have the second choice and the third choice, which is correct. They serve as an auxiliary force for maintaining internal security and preventing the infiltration at the coast and the border. So two of these are the correct option. Coming next is another question where you have to find out the correct match. So unauthorized wearing of police or military uniform is under the Indian Penal Code. So this is incorrect. Knowingly misleading the police officer engaged in their duty is again under the Penal Code. So this is again incorrect. However, under the recent Arms Amendment Act 2019, the celebrity gunfire which can endanger the personal safety of the other was included as an addition to the Arms Act of 1959. So here one would be the correct answer. Next coming is the regions and why they were in news. So Kherson and Zaporizhzhia was in Ukraine and Russia, so this is incorrect. Nagorno and Karabakh lie between Armenia and Azerbaijan, so again this is incorrect. Kivu and Ituri wars are related to Congo, so again incorrect. So none of these pairs are correct would be the answer. The next, so this is based on some of the recent happenings. So Israel has established diplomatic relations with Arab states like UAE, then it has with Bahrain, Sudan and Moscow. So that's correct. Arab Peace Initiative is mediated by Saudi Arabia, was signed by Arab League. However, Israel has not accepted it. So one is correct, two is incorrect would be the right statement. Coming next is we have to find out the pairs with the sports award. So Dhyan Chand award for the best performing sports person is correct. Arjun award for lifetime achievement is again correct. Dronacharya to honor the coaches is again correct. Rashtriya Khel Prodhan Puraskar is either by the individual or by the organization for their contribution in sports. So D is the fourth choice is incorrect. So three of these options are correct here. Coming next is 44th Chess Olympiad 2022 was held first time in India with the mascot named as Thambi. The trophy for the winning team in the open section is Veera Menchik Cup, and this in the women's cup is Hamilton Russell. So all of these four choices are correct here. So very direct question. The next is which are correctly matched. So Donbass is a region in Ukraine. Tigray is a region in Ethiopia and Kachin is a region in Myanmar. So all of these are incorrectly matched. So none of them is correctly matched here. Coming next is in the recent years, Chad, Guinea, Mali and Sudan have been in news because of successful coups, and this has been in the case of Chad it was in 2021. In Guinea again there was overthrown in the coup which was led by Domyabu. Similarly, things happened in Mali and Sudan. However, there could be a doubt with the Chinese military bases, but coming to a fact that simply Djibouti was the first where Chinese military base was established, and Chad so far does not have any military base, is itself a reason that B would not be the answer for this question. The next is considering the heavy industries, green hydrogen plays an important role in fertilizer, oil as well as steel plants. So in fertilizer to produce ammonia, in oil to produce cleaner fuels, and in steel to replace coal in the steel making process. So all these three are the right options. Now G20 was originally established as a platform for finance ministers and central banks to discuss the international economic scenario and the financial issues. That's correct. And India is giving a thrust to digital public infrastructure, which with open standards, API and an ability for better adoption. So both the statements stand correct here. Coming next is Five important scholars: Alexandria, Longhurst, Robert Swell, James Burgess, and Walter Elliot. All of them have done exceptional works with archaeological excavations. Now, the details have been covered with NCERT class 12. In the section on Harappan civilization, we have seen a lot of them, and later on we have seen during the Pallava architecture, the contribution of Longhurst has been studied. So, this is a very important and a direct question from history. The next is the sites and the correct match. So Base Nagar is a Shaivite site, Bhaja is a Buddhist site, and Sitnavasal is a Jain shrine. Now Bhaja has been again recently classified under UNESCO heritage. So all of these three are correctly matched. A very important question from recent current affairs as well. 7th August is declared as a National Handloom Day, and why it has been done so? Because Swadeshi movement was launched on 7th August in 1905. So both the statements are correct, and second is the correct explanation for the first statement. A very direct question again. The next is the details of the flag code of India. There are certain 9 important parts that are to be importantly taken into account for flag code of India, and this says that the standard size of the flag is 600 mm by 400 mm, and then the length to height ratio is 3:2. Both the statements are correct. So both the statements are correct, and they are related, because when you say 600 to 400, it automatically converts to 3:2. So that's how we determine the ratio. So A would be the right answer. Now, Constitution Day is celebrated on 26th November to promote constitutional values. Now, this is a very important aspect, because this was when we started the commemoration of the Constitution in 26th November 1949. However, the drafting committee was brought in 1947, and therefore this was on 29th August. Okay, so this statement is incorrect. However, the first statement is correct here. The next statement is Switzerland is one of the leading exporters of gold in terms of value. Now note, this gold talks about the golds with the bank reserves, not the gold mining. So this is not a question pertaining to geography but to economics. However, Switzerland was in 1997 one of the second leading gold reserves holder, but however it has sold many of its reserve and now accounts for only 6% of the reserves, falling to a position of 6th ranking recently. So statement 2 is incorrect, statement 1 is correct here. The next question, recently United States of America and European Union have launched the Trade and Technology Council. That's correct. The TTC has an important aspect where both of them claim that they are trying to bring technological progress and physical productivity under their control, which is again the correct explanation for statement 1. So A becomes the right answer here. The next question is, India accounts for 3.2% of the global exports as per 2020 data. So this is correct. Many local companies have been operating and taking advantage of the production linked incentive scheme. That's again correct. But this does not explain that India accounts for so much percent in the export. So both of them are independently correct, but statement 2 does not explain the statement 1 by all means. The next is the Stability and Growth Pact of European Union is a treaty that actually focuses on limiting the budgetary deficit of the countries of European Union, and this also makes sure that the government deficit should not exceed 3% of their GDP and the debt must not exceed 60% of their GDP. However, this has been criticized for being very rigid and does not include the economic conditions of the individual member nations. So 1 would be the right option here. The next important thing that you need to understand with the question on the global impact for safe, orderly and regular migration, this question is basically understanding or helping us to understand that all countries are not the member. So refer the letters or the words written here very carefully. So 1 becomes incorrect. The second is the GCM is a non-binding agreement. So again, the question says binding, so this is incorrect. And finally, regarding the internal migration or internally displaced members, this does not explicitly explain that this is one of the major aims of the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration. However, there have been provisions which could be interpreted for the same cause. So, all of these three does not stand correct for the question. The next question is the boundaries with Ukraine. So a very important question, as we had discussed in our expected series classes. Ukraine, the geography of Ukraine, which we have already covered in one of the lectures, is extremely important, and that is where we discuss this question in detail. So Belarus is one of the countries. Hungary is another country that borders Ukraine. Then Moldova is another country. Poland is another country. Romania, Russia is not given in the choices, and Slovakia. So Slovakia is again not given in the choices. So from the given choices, only Hungary and Romania are the correct match for this question. The next is, with reference to the atmosphere, which of these statements are correct? The total amount of insolation is around 1.5 times of the poles. The infrared constitutes around 53% of the insolation. Infrareds are part of non-visible spectrum, but the infrareds are absorbed by water vapor that is concentrated in the lower atmosphere. So C becomes the right option in this case. The next is, there are statements that soil in the tropical rainforest is usually poor in nutrients, and that's because of leaching. So first statement gets incorrect, but high temperature and moisture leads to humus formation or the dead organic matter which decomposes quickly, leading to the formation of humus. So 2 is the correct option here. 1 is the incorrect statement. The next question talks about the temperature contrast. What happens is the difference in the land and the sea heating. So land heats very quickly during the summer, so the difference actually is much higher, and therefore we say that temperature contrast between the continents and the ocean during the summer is more high, and a simple reason attributed to it is the specific heat of the water, which is more than the land. So both the statements are correct, and the statement 2 clearly explains the reason for it. Now, when I say specific heat of water is more, what does it simply mean? That it takes more energy to raise the temperature of water to a certain level, and that is why the contrast between the two is much high during the summer periods. The last question for this section is from the earthquake. Again, a direct question from your NCERT's class 12. So here we have been focusing on the chapter on volcanicity and earthquake. So under seismograph reading, we see that the P waves are recorded earlier. So when we say dogs and animals sense the earthquake earlier, that is because they live close to the ground and they have a capability to sense these P waves which run onto the ground or the surface, and therefore P waves are recorded earlier than the S waves is the correct statement. Then again, P waves, as you can see in this diagram, you have compression and refraction. Similar to a sponge, you take a piece of sponge and you squeeze it and you spread it out. So that's how P waves run. However, you take a string, tie it to one end and then release it from the other end, you would see an up-down movement, and that is how the S waves propagate. So it's basically up-down to an angle of to a given angle, right? So here both the statements are correct. So C becomes the right option. We are left with the last set for your GS paper, which we'll be covering next. However, as far we have seen, the paper was relatively simple. The questions from the current affairs were as expected, what we had discussed in our classes before. So a lot of questions were very direct. This time the paper, we could say, could be covered in a huge proportion from your NCERT, a very unusual case as compared to the last 2 years that we have seen. So again, I would recommend prepare NCERTs very well, because the nature of the paper is so dynamic that it keeps switching, and therefore NCERTs again become extremely important, keeping in light this year's paper. We'll be covering the next set pretty soon.